You're listening to the Della Fit Podcast.
360 degrees of holistic fitness and health all in one podcast. That is the De La Fit Podcast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this bonus episode of the De La Fit Podcast. We're giving you all a little something extra for sticking by us during our hiatus. We're going to be bringing you an interview with Dr. Jason von Stietz. That's right. Jason was benevolent enough to come back and do another interview and talk a little bit about trauma with us, something that many of us have dealt with. Many of us might not even know that we have dealt with trauma, whether it's with a person, dealing with a person that we care for or love, or just recognizing it within ourselves. So this is going to be a great interview. I'm very excited for it, and I hope that you all enjoy it. Right now, we're going to our interview with Dr. Jason von Stietz. Jason, let's get right down to it. All right. I have some clients that I'm currently working with. All right. I have one in particular who has suffered some trauma in his life. Recently, unfortunately, lost somebody very close to him via car accident. And what has taken place is that it has affected his ability to continue to have the motivation to work out, to keep himself at an optimal level. And he needs to do this because just the fact of certain health issues. So my question to you is, how would you go about using the tools of MAC as well as CBT? I'm saying them. I don't know if each one would apply to this situation.
Right.
How would you go about helping this individual?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things that stood out to me were, one, the trauma of losing a loved one or someone very important, unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to have a big impact on the person emotionally. And then you also said that this person needs to continue working out because of health issues.
Right.
So that makes it a very kind of complicated situation, and it's probably going to take a lot of collaboration and a lot of creative thinking to come up with a solution for this, because under normal circumstances, if you lose a loved one unexpectedly, you're going to need to go through, a grieving process, and that's perfectly normal. That's a healthy thing that you would want to do. Where you might, when someone experiences a loss, they feel sad, and it's normal to kind of retreat into isolation, at least just a little bit, and kind of spend time alone and reflecting. And oftentimes people kind of lose their energy, and that's a normal part of the process where they need some time to just kind of reflect on things that have happened, to process the sadness, and kind of that gives them time to heal and to move forward in the future. In this case, although this person is going to still need to do that, they need to balance that with also getting enough exercise and doing things for their health because they have a health condition.
Right.
So that is a tough one. So talking about the mindfulness acceptance commitment approach, mindfulness is step one. So so the first step would, at least as far as using mindfulness acceptance commitment approach, the first step would be to begin practicing mindfulness, if not on a daily basis, at least most days of the week. And to go back to talking about mindfulness again, so a lot of times we're kind of up in our head and we're worried about what's going to happen in the future, or we're kind of ruminating about what happened in the past. But in the present moment, that's where things are mostly okay, and that's where we can solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
So even though this person is probably very sad, and then they might have a lot of anxiety about their health because they might be thinking, I don't want to work out right now, and then that's going to lead to bad health problems. So then now they're sad and they're anxious about, what could happen to their health.
Right.
So practicing mindfulness, one, it's going to be beneficial to their health because it's going to kick in the parasympathetic nervous system. So there's the fight or flight response, and then the opposite and that's when our adrenaline's pumping, and that's when we're ready to fight or to run away from a danger. And in the short term, that's good if you need to use that energy to get to safety. But then in the long term, when your fight or flight is just kind of going and going because of daily stressors or because of just ruminating about something that's anxiety provoking, that can have a negative effect on your health.
Right.
So doing the opposite and doing some deep breathing to get your body into rest and digest mode,
mm-hmm.
and kind of kick in the parasympathetic nervous system instead of the sympathetic nervous system that activates the fight or flight. Like that, doing those deep breaths has a very positive effect on your health. And when you're in fight or flight, your digestive system shuts down, and the blood flow to your to the front of your brain where all the decision making takes place, that slows down because you don't need to digest food, you don't need to think, you need to just fight or to run away.
Right.
So doing those deep breaths gets the blood flowing back to your frontal lobes, gets the digestive system working again. So just doing those deep breaths and just doing mindfulness right there, that can have a positive effect on someone's health.
Okay.
And then also mindfulness and kind of focusing on the present moment doesn't necessarily mean kind of blocking out anything negative. So a lot of times if someone experiences a trauma like the loss of a loved one, they can maybe try to not think about it and just try to push it away and avoid it. And then that just prolongs the grieving process. But if they can be mindful with it, and then instead of trying to block out those thoughts, just allow themselves to have the thoughts, allow themselves to be aware of what they're thinking and how they're feeling, and be mindful with their thoughts and feelings about what's going on,
mm-hmm.
then that can help them to really process and allow them to feel it, and then once they've sort of shined a light on it, then that helps them to move forward after. So that I haven't really talked about somebody's, physical regimen, but doing that mindfulness will help them to first just process all of that
information,
all the information, and then that's going to help them to be able to get to the exercise. It's going to make it so it's not such a big barrier, and then they can actually do their workouts. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. I think, and from understanding what you're saying, it goes back to what I'm constantly learning as a trainer, is the fact of everything starts in the mind.
Right.
That's something I've been learning, and I actually was talking with one of my mentors, which is the fact of when I first started, my mindset was the fact of, look, we're gonna get in there, you're excited, get in there, get people fit, and get them here, get them there, get them exercise and things like that. And I've learned that if there are much deeper sometimes, or much more, how do I say it? That it's not necessarily always a physical, it's more so mental. Right. Even when it's not, even when it is physical, it's mental. Many people have certain types of, you said before, traumas and situations, I should say experiences that have caused them to feel certain ways, that cause them to not take care of themselves as they normally would have, or might have been taught in a certain way of to take care of themselves, which can be detrimental to their health. So what I feel that it is that you're saying is, you're basically, with this individual who has suffered a trauma, you're basically now taking them to that place where they need to go, which is, starting with the mental, dealing with the fact of the trauma, being mindful of it, which is interesting in itself, because the term mindful and mindfulness has been coming up so much in recent times that it's just, I feel it is something that we definitely need to get back to, because we have not actually, we've gotten away from ourselves.
Della Fit Podcast. 360 degrees of holistic fitness and health, all in one podcast.
We hope that you're enjoying the bonus episode of the podcast with our special guest, Dr. Jason von Stietz. Just a quick reminder, the De La Fit podcast will be back on its regular scheduled date and time of Fridays, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard and 10 a.m. Pacific, as well as another special announcement. If you're looking for the De La Fit podcast, you can find us on a plethora of different platforms, now of which iHeartMedia is now added. That's right, we are now accepted and available on iHeartMedia Radio. So, for all of those who are looking for us, you can find us almost anywhere. That's right, De La Fit Podcast is anywhere and everywhere, ready for you. Now back to our special bonus episode with Dr. Jason von Stietz.
You're now tuned in to the De La Fit Podcast.
So in a sense, you're like taking it home, bring it home, and, doing the breathing exercises, doing the things necessary allows us to help to, and perhaps you can say this better for me, I guess help to, I don't want to say get over, but help to start to heal. Would that be correct?
Right, exactly. It's addressing the root of the problem. So the person wants to exercise to stay healthy, but what's really going on is they experienced a trauma, they experienced a loss of a loved one, and that needs to heal in order for them in order for it to just be easier for them to go work out, to exercise, and to maintain their health the way that they need to.
Right. So, and with that, I want to ask you another question. Now, you have experience working with high school students, dealing with, I think you were saying it was a baseball program, if I'm correct. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. So a couple years ago, I had sort of my first formal sports psychology experience, my first formal training, and that was at the Major League Baseball Youth Academy in Compton.
Okay.
Yeah, it's this great program. There's different youth academies across the United States. I believe that the one in Compton is funded by the Angels. It's just part of their community service that they do. And I had the chance to be trained by Dr. Carol Oglesby, who's sort of a pioneer in the field of sports psychology. And we worked with high school and college baseball players. And it's a great place where sometimes baseball players from just across the country come to learn. Some of them were from Texas, some of them were from Arizona, neighboring states. It's completely free.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. At least it was at the time. Hopefully it still is.
Okay.
But it was completely free. And not only did they teach people baseball, but they also had SAT classes. They also had just tutoring and help for students with their homework. And they would have community days where different sort of former major leaguers or current major leaguers would come and just kind of help out. I believe Tommy Lasorda came one day, not on the day when I was there, but he came once. And another thing that was really great about it is they didn't focus on people because they were more skilled. They would just give everybody equal training, equal playing time, and all that. So, so someone who might have struggled to get any attention on their local high school team was getting equal attention as people who were going to get drafted and all that stuff. So it was a great experience, and that was sort of my first introduction to sports psychology, where I spent a whole summer just working with teams on different things like how to focus, how to bounce back from setbacks, all those different things. So that was a really great experience for me.
Well, I'm going to ask you this question, being that you've had that experience, and also for those out there, I'm a youth mentor. Those that know me know this. I want to ask because, unfortunately, typically, or rather, let me start out. Let me slow it down. First things first, bullying has been an issue. We've dealt with bullying on the large media scape. We've been, heard discussions about what they're doing in school to stop bullying. We've discussed about the fact of social media bullying and things of that nature. So for a young athlete, all right, a young person who is, say, getting into sports, all right, and they have perhaps experienced some type of bullying prior to coming in, or maybe they're experiencing it actually on the team, or let's just say any specific issue that a team would deal with, all right. What are some of the steps that you would take? And we'll start with bullying. All right. What are some of the simple steps you would start to take them through to deal with the trauma of bullying?
Right. Okay. So that's a great question. Yeah, and it kind of, So hopefully, it would be a situation where I could meet with the athlete in a private, confidential way, where if it's in front of the team, if it's in front of coaches, then they're going to be way less likely to bring it up, and they probably just wouldn't bring it up at all because they don't want to look weak. They don't want to. They don't want their teammates to make fun of them more, or they don't want their coaches to doubt them. So having that sort of private space to talk to them, and those things not getting back to the coaches and the team, is really important. And the athlete needs to be able to trust me, because I could be viewed as maybe just like another coach.
Right.
So then if they're thinking, oh, if I tell Jason this, he's just going to tell the other coaches, and then that's going to be bad for me. So they need to be able to trust me and understand that this is not going to get back to any coaches, any athletes, or anyone that they don't want to know.
Okay.
And then it's also important to have a lot of buy-in from the coaches, and they need to be able to know that I'm helping the team. They can trust my judgment, because sometimes, especially with old school coaches or just back in the day, if a coach saw an athlete talk to a sports psychologist, then they would think, okay, that person is weak, and they would already judge that person, or they would not understand confidentiality, and they would want to go and talk to the sports psychologist and ask, okay, so what's that person going through? Can I trust them? Can they perform? So those boundaries need to be there with the coach already, hopefully. And then if the coach, doesn't have that understanding yet, then hopefully I would be able to sort of work that out with the coach so that they could trust me and trust the athlete and trust, everything that's going on. So those would sort of be the first steps.
Okay.
And then after that, once I'm actually talking to the athlete, I would kind of just like always in CBT or in psychotherapy, I would want to just kind of talk to the person and then give them that place where they can go and just kind of vent and know that I'm not going to judge them.
Right.
And then once they've kind of unloaded that and I've helped them to sort of manage those feelings, then I would want to start problem solving with the athlete, and it would always be up to the athlete. So the athlete might think, you know what, now that I've talked about it, I feel much better, and these comments that my teammates are making, they're annoying, but really, I think I just want to kind of handle it by making a joke or handle it by just kind of ignoring it and brushing it off, and I'm just going to focus on my task. Or they might decide, actually, this is more of a bigger problem, and maybe there's gender discrimination.
Right.
Maybe they're being targeted because they're a member of the LGBTQ community.
Right.
Or maybe something more serious has gone on, and we thought it was just some teasing, but then actually there was some kind of abuse that happened.
Right.
So even then, it would still be up to the athlete because I would be a confidential source. So I would sort of weigh out the options. Like, would you like to bring this up to the Title IX investigator, the person who investigates sexual harassment and all that stuff?
Okay.
And these are sort of the things that could happen if you choose to do that. And then, so how do you feel about that? And then if they say they don't want to do it, then I just continue supporting them. And then if they say they do want to file some kind of report, then I would help them through that process and sort of be there as emotional support the entire way.
Good. All right.
Yeah. So does that get at your question, or is that like?
No, it actually does, because in lieu of the things that we've seen with and I think we talked about last time dealing with the women's gymnastic team, and just you find out about certain situations, unfortunately in certain sports teams, not all, but there have been issues of hazing and just different what is supposed to be a positive source of energy and supposed to bring out the best in others, finding out that, there are things or sometimes individuals that can prey upon those in these groups, in these clubs, and knowing or having some type of person there to help them, or knowing that they can go to individuals to help them is something that I think is great and that they all should look for. So and I know you're in the California area, if I'm correct. So if a young person is on a sports team or in some type of group or what have you, we'll just generalize.
Sure.
And they need to talk about this. They think they might need to talk about this. They don't necessarily know. It might be taking place with somebody who is a coach or a teammate or we'll say a bandmate, whoever, how would they go about finding somebody, say, through their school to talk to, to begin the healing process or begin the process of just defending themselves and helping themselves? How would they get to somebody like you, per se, in different areas? I know all areas are different, but, say in the school type of setting.
Sure. So if they're a college student, then they could go to the Student Counseling Center and they could talk to a counselor, and that would be a confidential, resource where they can just say everything that's happening, and then They can make their own decision about if they want to file a report, if they want to call the police, or if they don't want to do any of that and just want a safe place to talk to somebody. So that would be the Student Counseling Center. And then if they would like to file a report on campus, they could talk to their Title IX investigator. And that's the person who investigates sexual harassment, stalking, sexual abuse, just all of those types of situations. They could also talk to any faculty or staff member if they have a good relationship with that person, because they might feel weird about going and talking to a stranger, but they might have a good relationship with a certain professor, so they might feel more comfortable talking to that person. The only issue would be outside of the Student Counseling Center, everybody else on campus is a mandated reporter.
Right.
So they would be required to report it to the Title IX investigator, who would then follow up with an investigation. So if they're fine with that, then that's great. But if they're still not sure, then I would recommend talking to a student or talking to someone at the Student Counseling Center.
Okay.
And then as far as high school, because they're typically under the age of 18, they may not be able to get a confidential resource, because the person would probably, if they found out that there's some kind of abuse going on, then they would probably want to contact the parents, and they would also be mandated to report that to, it's called something different in each area, but Child Protective Services or Department of Family and Child Services, because it would be considered child abuse, so they would have to report that.
Okay.
Yeah. So they would just need to know that the person would do their best to protect their confidentiality, but they would still need to go about telling certain, disclosing that to certain sort of agencies or institutions to follow up on that.
Right. But overall, it would be best for them to talk to somebody. Like, would it be a counselor if in their school, if it's high school, or just anybody? Yeah,
if it's high school, then they might know who their counselor is, but they might not talk to them very often.
Okay.
So it would be best to talk to a counselor, but then also if they have a favorite teacher or a favorite office person that they just trust, then they can talk to that person too.
Jason, I appreciate you for coming onto the show and talking and sharing your information with us about this, and about in both of these situations, because I feel what it is that you do. It goes way past just sports. It goes way past just it goes way past, as we see, fitness in the physical. And that's the one thing you and I have talked about before, the whole thing of, 360 degrees of holistic fitness and health. It deals with the mind, it deals with the body, not one is just a secular branch, all of these all are combined, and they work to make the unique individuals that we are. So I'm so glad we have individuals like you who can come on the podcast and talk and share your information, and perhaps be a beacon of light to those who are listening, so that now they can kind of follow, like, okay, these are some steps I can take to help continue my mental, physical fitness.
Right. Thank you so much. I love sports. I love working with performance, but then in the end, it's the emotional part, the mental part. It's the whole 360, degrees of fitness that you just mentioned.
Right.
Like, all of that is so important too. So even though we love sports, it is important that we take care of those traumas and make sure people are healing and they're okay.
And we're thankful for people like you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right. And we're going to continue. Hopefully we'll have Jason on again at some point. Anybody that wants to contact us to contact Jason, we have your information. But Jason, let's just give it some more. I know you have an email, you have social media. Would you care to share that?
Sure. Awesome. So the website for my private practice is cbtsocal.com. So cbtsocal.com. And then the social media for my private practice is just at cbtsocal for Facebook, for Instagram, for Twitter. And then I have my more personal Twitter, which is nextgen_perform. And then my Instagram is, it's at some of this, some of that. So SUMMAH, and this. So Summa is spelled, like that. Summa, some of this, some of that.
Okay.
And my email address is just my first initial and my last name, and then at cbtsocal.com. So real quick, JVONSTIETZ at cbtsocal.com.
Jason, thank you for coming back on the show. We thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Delafit podcast. Ta-ta for now.